Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Marquette, and we're so glad you're with us today to stay curious. I have Dean Schaaf beside me. Dean, how are you?
I'm
Dean,
doing great.
Well, good. Dean's
Great.
a good friend of mine here on the Space Coast. He's president of the Brevard Veterans Memorial Center, a beautiful place we're going to talk about. He also had an interesting job in his NASA career, is going overseas as the ground operations manager to catch the shuttle in a net if it needed to, basically, right, Dean?
At every site except for Morocco. Morocco had a long enough runway. We didn't need a net.
All right,
So-
didn't need a net, but you were involved in that. Dean has been on our show before. And what, we got Buzz Lightyear back here?
This
Well-
galaxy needs my protection. Buzz Lightyear, to the rescue!
All right.
There we go. And he's got green on, so it's an invisible Buzz Lightyear. Dean has got a great story with how he was involved with
Yeah.
Buzz Lightyear.
All right.
15 years ago, all those shenanigans
that's
were
right.
going on. That time went by quick, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
Yeah. Well, we're going to enjoy that. Buzz, how you doing today?
I'm Buzz Lightyear, Space Ranger. I come in peace.
Of course he comes in peace. Well, we're glad to have you here.
Protect the galaxy from the threat of invasion.
Of course he does. We'll hear more from Buzz Lightyear later here as we're looking at a beautiful picture of our green screen from Earth to Sky Calculus, a group in California that high schoolers that launch stratospheric balloons almost every day, taking radiation counts and other things. And they take up a memento up there and sell it to help pay for their helium they use for these serious balloons. So that is off my favorite website, spaceweather.com. But Dean's involved in a lot of interesting things. Dean, you've been part of our Stay Curious family here since almost the inception there. You and I are leaning on our COVID barrier there.
Yeah.
Back in the conference room. It looks nothing like that now. But Marty, to say hello to Marty Winkle there. Hey, Marty.
Hi, Mark. Hi, Dean.
All right.
Marty and I have been doing this for over 850 episodes.
Wow.
We can't even believe it that
Yeah.
we can even stand each other anymore. But Marty's putting up with me.
Hey, who's saying we can?
Yeah, let's say we can. Yeah, he's walking out the door there. But so you know that we've been doing this a while, and we really love celebrating the shuttle era. And you're one of the shuttle guys. And thought I'd throw this in that over the weekend they started putting the aft skirts down for the SRBs to put Endeavour vertical, as you see in the poster
Right.
behind there.
And wasn't there an article in today's paper or yesterday about a picture of how they've get the shock absorbers under that to if there's an earthquake and this kind of thing.
Absolutely.
So
Have you seen the shuttles in captivity? I know you've seen Atlantis, but have you been over and seen Discovery at the Udvar
no, I have not.
And
Just Atlantis.
of course, Endeavor's in the California Museum of Science there in Los Angeles. And just thought I'd throw that in there that you've worked with all the orbiters. Very involved Dean was with all the launches, and if they hadn't made it across the Atlantic Ocean, he'll tell us about what was going on with that.
Right. Right.
But
Right. I worked 112 shuttle missions.
Okay.
In my DoD and NASA career. So,
all right, out of 135, that's pretty good. This will be very unusual to see this bird on a stack, and they're going to have observation decks around the higher areas. But Dean's right; they have to think about the possibility of an earthquake,
Yeah.
and that wouldn't be too good. Well, here is your beautiful facility, the Brevard Veterans Memorial Center on Merritt Island. Dean, tell us a little about it. How long has it been there?
Well, the main part of the building was built in 1989-90, and then we expanded. We got money to build a museum in 2016, and it's been open. The new museum has been open since Veterans Day on 2016.
Well, it's a beautiful facility. Did get a little bit ahead of myself because I wanted to let y'all learn more a little bit about Dean as I do. You grew up in Kokomo, Indiana, not too far from my Findlay, Ohio, Midwestern roots there. You're a Navy man. And what did you do in the Navy?
Well, as enlisted, I was in SOAS stations, or underwater listening devices that we track submarines, and I was lucky enough to get into an officer program. We went to Purdue as an E5. Navy paid for everything. I got commissioned, went to flight training, I was too old to be a pilot, so I went naval flight officer and then flew P-3s tracking Soviet submarines for 18 years.
Wow. Well, boiler up to that.
That's right.
Purdue graduate. Okay.
Yeah.
We had with Terry White's daughter, Marty, was also a submarine chaser in the Navy.
Okay.
And she'd probably gone by White back then. And forgive me for not thinking of her first name, but Rebecca. Thank you, Marty. Rebecca White. Yeah, she was a Navy chaser on there.
Okay.
She told us an interesting thing about the accident with the Titanic people losing their lives. That the Navy knew about that days
Right.
before they released it.
And
They
that was same with the Thresher and the when we lost the Thresher,
I remember that.
and they used SOAS to try to pinpoint where that was. Too.
Yeah.
And it's a sound surveillance system that.
Well, the Navy couldn't say, she said, because
That's right.
they don't want people to know how much they can hear under the
right.
water in
Yeah.
there, which the water is an excellent conductor of sound, is it not?
That system was classified until shortly after the Hunt for Red October, but it wasn't because of that movie that it was declassified. It was because of the Walker Brothers spy ring, the Walker family spy ring.
Really?
Declassified it. Yep.
Huh. Well, we're going to talk just a little. I love Dean is one of my favorite people here on the Space Coast since I got involved in the.
He's my favorite too.
All right, thank you. The commercial arena there. He's involved with our Museums of Brevard and on our governance board, an important member there because this is such a wonderful facility that you have there. And and then we've made a great friends as space partners here as we promote space there. But Dean's got his hands in a lot of things, and it keeps you kind of on your toes in our golden years, right?
Yeah. One of these days I'll retire.
Yeah. I think you and I are pretty much the same ilk. It'll be hard to retire. But let's talk about your Veterans Memorial Center. Thank you, Marty. There's your website.
Right.
Of course, the new Space Force is involved now. You've got a lot of volunteers. Just tell us a little about it.
Yeah, we've got the facility there that we rent out rooms. Besides the museum, we have a 4,500 volume military history library. So some of our volunteers volunteer in the library. We've got 75 volunteers to keep our operation going.
The DAV is a very important part of your
DAV
operation.
is a tenant command. They've got 2 offices there, and they use the main part of our lobby as their waiting room. Really, they work. They're available 8 to 12, 5 days a week, and they process more VA claims than any place in Florida, maybe the country, but about 5,000 annually. That these 26 service officers that belong to DAV 123, they're at our facility.
Our disabled American veterans, and you said more than 24 volunteers help with that program.
Right. Yeah, and they go through training every year, and they to certify as a service officer.
Well, here's a look off of one of the porches that you have off the second floor there, looking north.
That's in our 3rd floor tower, and it looks out over a plaza. Now that plaza was dedicated in 2012, and we have out in that plaza are monuments to every conflict from the Revolutionary War on, and all the other wars or conflicts are in the bricks around the star-shaped there. But we have other monuments such as you'll see the twisted beams from the tower there in the background, and over to the left there's a monument to the sheriff's office and firefighters that we've lost.
You have a statue to Canine Corps out there, too.
That's in the background there. Now, what's not shown there is a couple more monuments we just added, and one is to the immortal chaplains, the 4 chaplains that went down in the USS Dorchester. We memorialize that every year in February. And then next to it is a new monument called the Allied Monument. And any of the country's allies that have fought with us in the wars and bricks in there. And mainly it was dedicated by a group out of Orlando, mainly Vietnamese, that looking for a place to put this monument. And so it's been there about a year and a half. And we just had, on Memorial Day, we had Dutch riders, Dutch motorcycle riders, shipped 12 motorcycles to New York, rode down to our facility en route to Miami, but they dedicated a wreath at this Allied monument. And they told me that I'm not pronouncing my name right. That it's Schaaf.
Oh, Schaaf.
Schaaf. Yeah,
Not Schaaf, it's Schaaf.
So
That's
we
it.
had a good time with that.
Those were-
and Rolling Thunder
They're from
from the Netherlands.
the Netherlands. Okay.
The Netherlands.
And Schaaf is Dutch, or
Yes,
okay.
it is. And
I
yeah.
actually thought it might be more German than Dutch. But
Well, it's
don't slap
German
me
Dutch.
here, okay?
No,
In there,
it really is. But it's Deutsch,
Deutsch,
so,
yeah.
so anyway, that's
Well, I love our memorials. Anytime I'm traveling and I see a military memorial, I'll do a U-turn to go around and look at it,
Yeah.
take pictures. They're always so representative of what our country's about and the people who've fought and come back or lost their lives or been disabled in
and
there.
what you see there in that picture are the Hueys, the helicopters are Vietnam, Huey on the right, and the Cobra on the left, and then the jet over there is an A-7 Navy jet. It was a ground support aircraft, and we had not in the picture is a tank from the Korean era, and then a deuce and a half and a water wagon, this kind of thing. So
Marty, show the statue of the canine they have out there. Is pretty
Yeah.
cool. That's sort of a new addition, I think.
no, it's been there a while, but
right there.
yeah,
And, then you have a Huey helicopter cockpit there at your front entrance door.
right. We had an
Just
extra
did it.
helicopter, and we literally cut it in half. So we put it out in front of our museum, right by the front door, and kids can get in there and play all they want. And
Has 2 floors, actually a 3rd floor you get up to also,
Yeah.
but so many mannequins there, Dean, that I've turned around and frightened myself, like
Right.
I'm bumping into somebody, really.
last count is around 60 now mannequins. We keep getting new ones in all the time. Some of the old ones have to be replaced too. So, yeah, there are 60 mannequins there in period uniforms, and what you're looking at there is a Buffalo Soldier mannequin. So.
They have a great
But,
display of women in the military. You have
we do.
outfits of every military branch for the
Right.
female.
And one of
Mannequins.
the latest one we just ordered, Christy Blanchard is our secretary, and she was in the 2nd class that went through West Point. So her West Point uniform is on display in there now.
Oh, wow.
So-
Really? Okay, that's pretty impressive.
The dress uniform.
We've got, you have a traveling trunk program that I think's unique. Just briefly tell us
That's right.
about that.
We have a trunk that with wheels, you just grab it and go, and it's got we got one for Revolutionary War, Civil War, Vietnam, World War I, II, Korea. So if any school, if a teacher wants to check out one of these traveling trunks, all she has to do is contact us. We can go to her class and speak if she wants that, or she can do it on her own. And the kids get to handle everything in the trunk to get a feel for what was in that era of the conflict.
I
So,
told you, it's us space educators. I've thought about doing a Mercury, Gemini, Apollo trunk. You have everything in there to just loan out and then make sure everything you get back. I think that's a wonderful thing.
It's on
popular
our
too, isn't it?
It's on our website. Yeah, it is. And I had a request from somebody down in Vero Beach that wanted to use one of them down there. So it never panned out, but we are getting requests from out of our area.
I wanted to mention that you do give away scholarships.
Right. We have a scholarship program. This year, we're giving 22,000, I think it is, in 13 different scholarships.
Good for you.
Anywhere
Wow.
from $1,500 to $3,000, depending on how the individual is graded out. But this last year, we gave 16 $1,000 scholarships. So it runs about that, and those are part of that is due to some generous donors we have that for the scholarship program. This year, an anonymous donor was $10,000. So
Wow.
it really
How often's that
really helps us
happen?
out.
But that's great that not only honoring our military, but promoting the education of
And normally a lot of the scholarships are going to JROTC students. This year, none of ours are going, but we did because we didn't get any applications from them. But last year, I think we gave out 6 to ROTC
Interesting.
students.
We're talking with Dean Schaaf here. We're going to get to his Transoceanic Aboard Landing site. We're going to get to you too,
This
Buzz.
is an intergalactic emergency. Buzz Lightyear, to the rescue!
He's trying to interrupt, but we've got some other stories to do here in a minute, Buzz. So we'll get to you here in a minute. But there's some big news that's been in the on the TV and in the newspapers and so forth that the Veterans Memorial is building this amphitheater. Tell us about that, Dean.
And that's something we've been working for 3 years now with Merritt Island Redevelopment Agency and the county commissioners to get this built, trying to make our area, the area that around the mall, the downtown of Merritt Island, this kind of thing. So this is, we've got an 82-acre park adjacent to our facility there, and there's some views of it. Back in the far back where the green grass is there, that's where the amphitheater will be, facing this way. It will seat about 5,000 in the grassy area.
Amazing.
And there'll be a couple other buildings added there, restrooms, a snack bar with a place to eat with a covered area, and more parking spaces.
That's
So,
the Indian River up there.
right, and that's a lagoon off of that's the Sykes Creek Banana River, not the Indian River. The Indian River's on there.
Oh, this is Banana River.
This is Banana River,
Looking at,
Sykes
okay.
Creek of Banana River. Right.
So, and yeah, right. That's a banana, because that's the
Right.
east side
That's
of it.
Cocoa-
The west
well,
side
well,
of
that's-
Merritt Island is the
Right, that's the Newfound Harbor that you see there, the
and
strip of
to the
land.
left is the big facility
That's
with
right.
the Veterans Memorial
Yeah.
there. That's this facility here. Well, glad that we could share that, because
Yeah.
how long have you been leading this group there, Dean?
I'm going on 7 years now as a president, and but before that I was a museum curator. I was other jobs that I had. I was even when I was in the Navy and NASA. I would go to the board meetings there because I was in a group, Fleet Reserve Association, that was the founders of this, along with the DAV 123, and we had a permanent seat on the board, so I was filling that seat. And that's how I got my
How
my foot in the door.
how many square feet?
6,000 square feet on
6,000.
in the museum.
Yeah.
So
And you could use 10. I mean,
yeah.
I know it's just,
Yeah.
there's so many cool things there. One of my favorite artifacts is the piece of rope that they hung Japanese Emperor Tojo
Tojo,
with.
right?
For some reason, you
Yeah.
got that's a thick rope too.
Yeah,
so I
it's-
remember in there, they have a NASA
Now
display there. You do it well. You have a nice little space commemoration there to our fallen astronauts.
Right. We don't want to steal your thunder, so we just have a little bit there.
Well,
And we send
appreciate
everybody
that.
down here.
Yeah. And it's a very mutual relationship. Dean brought in a box of stuff here, space stuff that we can use somewhere down the line. So if you're on Merritt Island, visiting here, making a vacation, whether you're a veteran or not, this is worth going to. And I believe the price is right.
It's free,
There you
and
go.
just donations only. And we've been able to. We have a small store, so we make enough there, and with other contributions that we get we average about $1 a person basically. That donates, and some people give more than that. But it's behind the Merritt Square Mall, if you know where that is, off 520. The address is 400 South Sykes Creek Parkway.
And the whole area is being transformed. They're moving the hospital there.
Yeah.
It'll become a downtown like Cocoa Village in a way. And once you get 5,000 people at a concert, that opens up to all kinds of
And there's
from all kinds of venues from
Yeah.
in there. And we've already done some stargazing there, and look
Yeah.
forward to doing that this fall too.
Right,
So-
and Myra is working to on the mall too, to upgrade it, with the owners that are up in New York. But eventually that mall will have to be revitalized like you did here in Titusville
Yeah.
with one of your malls.
Yeah,
So,
certainly will.
Yeah.
Well, we're talking with Dean Schaaf. Buzz, how you doing over here?
Buzz Lightyear, Space Ranger, Universe Protection Unit.
That's what we want. And Buzz, we're going to get to him and how he took a trip to space that Dean had something to do with, getting him back anyway. But
Yep.
we're fascinated always, I am, of course, with talking about your duties out at Kennedy Space Center, working for NASA. Here's a picture you showed me as we were
Right.
going over today's
and one
show.
of it, I started out as
Duck.
started out as a ground ops manager, and then was the lead NASA convoy commander, then the convoy commander, and then at the end I was the landing recovery manager. So I was in charge of all the landing sites, and I would go to Edwards quite a bit as the NASA convoy commander. And this is during one of the turnarounds out there. Everything was outdoors in a mate demate device, MDD, and sometimes we had to deal with rain and, in this case, lightning. That was in the. It looks like it's close, but it's in the background. But
Marty, interesting thing Dean told me is that the orbiter would just get filled with water.
yeah,
I mean,
Yeah,
where would the water pool up, in the cargo bay?
in the bottom of the cargo bay, and we actually, the technicians figured out a way to snake cameras, on a back in there to see how much water was in there, and there may be 3 or 4 inches of water in the base of that, but we're trying to catch the water draining out of it in 50-gallon drums to measure how much was in there and this kind of thing.
Huh.
But before we could fly, made it to the 747, we had the shuttle manager, ferry manager, had to, and his engineers had to figure out, well, the weight and balance. So how much water, where it was, and this kind of thing. So it was definitely an impact on the mission.
Well, did anybody think about a boat plug at the bottom of it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
They sure did, but they're
I'd
not
say
their
just-
management.
I'd say just throw a tarp over it to keep the water out of it, but you couldn't damage the.
I can't
the-
believe that, Marty. The electronics and stuff. You're going to say something.
Yeah, where'd the entry point? Was it the,
It's through the payload bay. It wasn't leak proof or waterproof, so it would just leak through the doors.
then why at the launch pad with the payload loaded?
Well, because it's in a vertical position and it doesn't, the water, it may get some water in there, but then in this, sitting in a horizontal position, all the water just falling on it, it would drain inside.
Yeah, but we get some pretty good storms, and even though it's vertical,
Yeah.
you still
And
gonna have water.
and it may have gotten water in it here. I don't know. I was never, associated with it on the launch pad here. So
That's up to Terry.
Pardon me?
Terry may know.
Yeah, Terry may know exactly, and that's interesting.
Right.
Dean just said he wasn't associated with the birds on the launch pads. You were you were about getting them back.
yeah, it had to land someplace,
And there's your little.
yeah, that was our KSC convoy command vehicle, and the new one at the end, and we built that. I forget where it was, but we designed it, and the USA and the engineers decided what they needed in there, and design it from scratch. And
Convoy command here, and you
yeah.
had one out at Edwards.
yeah, but not this. It wasn't
Yeah.
quite as nice as this one. This was the Cadillac model. Out there we had the Chevy.
And to show you guys, Dean is going to show us some show and tell pictures here in a minute. That you got cutouts of people in those windows.
Yeah, somebody
there,
photoshopped some
to,
images on there. So.
So believe I've learned this. You NASA people, not just the astronauts, have a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, we did.
And I guess it's a good stress
Yeah.
tension breaker, huh?
Right. Yeah, my position in there was in the right-hand seat there. You'd have the driver, and then I was in the right seat, and behind me were all the USA engineers and safety engineers, quality, working the landing. So
Well, we're going to talk a little bit about Dean's job as the manager for these oceanic abort landing sites. As you're looking at this, we were talking about the blue is the continents. There's KSC.
Yep.
The red is the altitude degree that the payload has to go to.
So a low
And-
inclination, 28.5 degree, went right over Banjul. So that was our primary site in the Gambia. And then you had some mid inclination, and then the very high inclination was 57. And for that one, we had to use Zaragoza. That was the northernmost site. And then the mid inclinations would be probably Maroon, Zaragoza, and Morocco. So now after Morocco closed, we had to close it at the end of the program. We moved to Istres, France. So it replaced that, and it was pretty much on the same inclination though as.
Now we all feel bad for Dean because he had to go to all these places and hang out with astronauts.
I only made 70 trips. Overseas,
Okay.
something like
All
that.
right. We talked to you. What did you collect Some people collect ashtrays out of hotels, and
Well, all my different aircraft flights, I collected barf bags. So
barf
what the heck,
bags.
you always had a barf bag there. So if it was different, I'd just pick up a different one.
How many do you have in
That
your
was-
collection?
Actually, it wasn't I didn't start that. Bob Fleming, who's the guy that hired me in as a gum, he's the one that started the collection. I just kept it up for Bobby.
Okay.
And
Well, that reminds me, they gave you a special barf bag for your retirement, didn't they?
no, they did, yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
But I used it a few times too. So.
There you go. I'll bet. I know I would. Well, on this picture on the right-hand side, we're going to talk about this. That is a shuttle against a fence,
Right.
the arrested fence structure. We're going to talk about that in a minute. We want to emphasize that over 60 airports in the world were on alert every time a shuttle launched.
Right.
And look at the one in the left-hand corner shows going up the coast. I had no idea that an
Those were-
airport there at
And we had what those are called launch
Myrtle
abort sites.
Beach.
Yeah, and as it went up the East Coast, as it would go up the LSO out at the landing support officer at JSC would say, Myrtle Beach drop off. The next one drop off. The next one drop off, and all the way up to Canada. And we actually had 5 sites in Canada that they supported us. 3 on Newfoundland. And Halifax was a support site, and so was Labrador, we had Goose Bay, Labrador was one of the sites.
Now, these were necessary because
As it went up, if you didn't, we wouldn't want to go to Tal if we didn't have to. If we could land on the East Coast, just make drop the external tank and come around and land. Why? All you needed was, just 10,000 foot of runway, and those runways were up the East Coast. So they picked those based on what they had there, the fire capability and everything. So Myrtle Beach was just it was one that fit the beer. Dover, Marine Corps Air Station, Cherry Point, so. All the way up there, and I visited most of those and doing training. And what I would do was just brief the fire department and the management to say, if the shuttle comes in, it's going to land, and the commander's got the con. He's they'll get off, and you'll help them off if you need to. But we didn't train them like we did at the town sites. We didn't have guys that would go in and know how to extract them from the vehicle. We didn't figure they would need extraction. They just land like an airplane and walk off the vehicle.
this, of course, is the last scenario that you'd have about a shuttle losing an engine,
Right.
some catastrophic event on the way.
Yeah.
And we're in the middle of a lightning storm right now that we're hearing boomers behind us there. Marty showed me a sign that if we go off, we go off.
Yeah.
So just keep that in mind. Thank you, Marty, for that heads up. But all over the world were sites for that first orbit if they had to be ditched somewhere. And here's another way of looking at that, Dean.
Right. And
Very complex
that's
chart there.
like a set and subset of all the landings. The outer circle that includes all the landings. And the emergency landing sites, they could be Hoedspruit, South Africa, or Kinshasa, Zaire, and some of these that they had identified. Those sites were the State Department would be on a circuit, and they would have somebody at the embassy notify the sites to see if they're ready or not, and they would report whether they could support. And then, of course, we had DoD sites, launch abort sites on the left hand side of that is what we just talked about, and you had the TAL sites as a subset there, and augmented sites. We had a couple of sites that were augmented, but they weren't TAL. So, there's
An
just
amazing part of the shuttle history that you don't think about
Right.
this piece. How many people are mobilized over at the TAL site with you?
Well, from here, each site had about 25 from the KSC here, and then the DoD came in with at least that many because some of the sites they'd have a C-130. DoD would take care of some of the fire rescue at the DoD sites. We would take our fire guys from KSC here at say Ben Guerir and Banjul, but at Morona and Zaragoza, those are DoD sites, so the DoD would support that. and a C-130 with an airdroppable Zodiac raft. If the astronauts had to bail out in the middle of the ocean,
Wow.
why they could go pick them up, drop the rafts, and they had PJs on there from the DoD, so they were pulling PJs or Air Force parachute rescuemen
Okay.
from all over the world to support every launch. So
My gosh.
and it was DoD had a big part in the TAL site.
Every launch, all this had to be
Right. And then-
mobilized.
And then you had about 50 or so locals. So all total, we had about 100 on standby for any one mission at a TAL site. And
Marty?
it varied because of the site too. But
Marty has a comment or question.
yeah,
Yeah, as far as I know, on an RTLS, return to launch site,
right.
that is strictly return to launch site.
That's correct.
Excludes all the other East Coast.
That's right.
Okay.
We did look into could we return to launch site, say at Cecil Field, outside of Jacksonville or this kind of thing, but we never got to that point. So all the return to launch site was back here at KSC, and the convoy, once we launched, we would stay out there on the runway in position until we were released from RTLS.
Mm-hmm.
So
What these landing sites for the shuttle in a potential emergency situation look like in these nearly third world countries?
and that is the most,
Wow.
that is most of the most third world country was the Gambia, Banjul, but that's a long runway that the
This is
British-
Gambia Banjul.
Yeah, and this is the country of Gambia is completely surrounded by Senegal, which is French, the Gambia being British, and this was a long runway that the British had built in the colonial days, I guess, and some of the buildings seemed like they were from that era too.
Wow.
And but in this case, it was the only one where we had to build a turnaround pad, and that's what you see off to the right there. At when they would do the turnaround there, then we built that because we couldn't shut down the international airport, the only one in the country. So we couldn't shut down the airport if we had a shuttle land there. So we
Oh, really? I'd pull off the runway.
we would-
Sure, you
yeah.
couldn't keep and have to. Then
Right.
we're going
In
to show
fact,
you
there
what
was-
the mate demate.
There was
might
a
look
mission.
like.
There was a mission where we had an airliner that wanted to land, and we were trying to launch, and I had that airliner holding out there, and I'm talking directly to the flight director on landing field, and she's saying, "Come on, hey," I'm saying, "Can we land this aircraft?" Well, we got, this kind of back and forth. She finally said, "If you could get that aircraft down in 5 minutes, we'll clear it." So this aircraft, it was from Senegal. It landed, and when it taxied off the runway, they launched the shuttle.
Oh my
It was
gosh.
that close.
That close.
So, but here you got 200 people in an airliner out there flying circles, and why can't we land? So,
But one of the more interesting things of the space shuttle era, I find, is something called the Shuttle Orbiter Arresting System. Of course, that's the SOAS.
right. There's always an acronym.
Yep, there it is, all wound up. Tell us about that, Dean.
Well, what you see there is the actual cape or the net. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The net, and we wrap that up every time at the end of it and coil up on that coil, so we can take that out there and spread it out. And then this is what you see once it's raised. It's 27 foot high at the center and 350 foot wide, and the shuttle, that's 100 foot into the overrun is where we put that net, and so that leaves you 800 feet or so. So that shuttle could stop in 800 feet.
My gosh.
And
There's a little
right. That's the
picture
one
you showed me.
That's one we're just starting to erect, but that's in Banjul, and it looks a little rough, but once we get it up and all tied down and everything, it looks a lot better. But there was 4 foot on the length and then straight up, and you see there where the one they did that so that the main landing gear or the nose landing gear would clear that main bundle before it flipped up underneath and
Sure glad we never had to
Yeah,
test
that's
that.
true.
But
but
an incredible little tidbit about the shuttle era. The the SOAS there, and now you know. There.
And there was two stanchions there, and you can see one barely, and it's a yellow, but that's what raised it, and we could raise it in about 10 seconds.
Oh, really?
And hydraulic, and then the arresting system that would slow it down to a stop is we're further 300 foot down the runway, tied to the main net. And as the shuttle would engage that net, those would turn faster and faster, and they had blades in there with 50 gallons of ethyl glycol, or basically antifreeze, and that's what it. But that blade working against that fluid in there would boil off, and it would stop the shuttle. You know, it would just the resistance there. So that the arresting systems are simple, but this one was humongous. I mean, they even tested this with a B-52.
Oh, really?
That they could stop a B-52 with that before they built this system. So there were 6 of these built. There was one in Morone, Zaragoza, Banjul. There was one in Hawaii, and there was one in Guam. And the only site that didn't need it, I say, was Morocco. So that's.
Well, this never happened, but this is a scenario out at Edwards Air Force Base, a typical.
That's a typical landing there with the bus type thing off to the left. There was the mobile hospital, and once you had the white room attached, why they would come out. The crew would come out through that. There were 6 chairs, like lounge or recliners in there, that they would check them out before they could come down that stairs in the back there and walk around. So they would all go through there, and
now all this would not be at an overseas TAL site. They would have to be shipped over immediately.
The only thing we had at an overseas, and you see the purge and cool hooked up there. We didn't have any of that. The only thing we would do, if it landed at TAL site, we'd send our guys in with the sniffers and everything and make sure it had no hazardous, and then we'd push a staircase up to the main hatch and open the hatch and get the crew out. So
you had a hatch tool there.
Yeah, we did.
Over there, and there
Yes.
you have to have.
Right.
Very interesting, and this was, if they had to do this.
We had tow bars at each of the sites too that were.
This was actually putting the Enterprise on to go to the World's Fair in New Orleans. It was actually ferried there on a barge. So this is that process.
Yeah,
but that's what you would have to do at a TAL site to get.
That's right. This was at Mobile, Alabama. This picture here.
Wow.
And but after the end of the shuttle program, this is exactly how they loaded all the shuttles to go to DC, to LA. When they got out to LA, they had to use the cranes to offload it there. And the one we took the Endeavor,
Discovery.
the Enterprise,
Oh, yeah,
to
Enterprise.
New York.
Yeah.
And they offloaded it at JFK, put it on a barge, sailed down the Hudson, and then lifted it up on the Intrepid. And so.
With our $2 billion space planes there at the time. It's just wonderful. Well, that puts the button on our TAL sites here with Dean Schaaf. I think we're ready for this guy here. Let's see what, to the Buzz, you ready?
Buzz Lightyear reporting for sector duty. Who's in charge here?
Well, that'd be Dean Schaaf over here. That'd be him over here. So, we'll talk about that.
All right, time to blast off for adventure. In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, to infinity and beyond.
Well, I'm sure if you guys remember what Buzz Lightyear, but Buzz was launched.
You take your back.
Buzz was launched on SCS 124 in May of 2008. Spent 458 days on the International Space Station. Did all kinds of experiments there, and you had some of the pictures there.
Yeah, we're going to see some pictures of that here.
And then at STS 128 returned it to land, and it's now in the Smithsonian. It was put there in 2012.
2008 was these 2 missions. And of course the movie was out. The Toy Story movies were a big deal. I enjoy those. And how'd you get it? We got to the shows
Well,
here.
What happened? It was supposed to land, 128 was supposed to land at KSC. Disney was here in force. They were going to take Buzz into custody, but it landed in California. So I got the word that me and Jennifer Tharp was the public affairs lady with me, and we were told that we had to take custody of Buzz, and he was not to be photographed. No photographs were to be published until Disney got hold of it.
Wow.
And then
Let's get him up in space here.
Yeah.
What is really cool is that another Buzz Aldrin, cleared him for launch. This Pixar, that is the Disney animation studio, they really got into this, didn't they?
Yeah.
And they got Buzz Aldrin involved, whose real name is Buzz. His sister called him Buzzer, tried to call him brother, and she kept saying Buzzer instead of brother. And he had his name changed to Buzz Aldrin, maybe because of Buzz Lightyear. What do you
I
think?
think Buzz was named after Buzz.
Oh, okay, all right. That's why we have you here.
Right.
But Woody was at his launch. That looks like Spaceview Park, Marty. I thought
Yep.
that's pretty cool.
Yep.
Woody, one of the characters I like. Tom Hanks is the voiceover of that. Watching the launch of 124 in May 30th, 2008, right?
Right.
Up there.
Right.
And there's Buzz up in the space station. He was part of the expedition 19, 20, and 21 cruise. There he is with the astronaut Shamatov and Fink on the right there. They did a bunch of experiments with him. And they were actually part of the parade that Disney had. There's Buzz floating freely in the space station. There he is checking up to Houston.
I'm stationed up in the Gamma Quadrant of Sector 4.
All right.
Stand back while I power up my laser.
All right, he's doing that. Apparently, they didn't want anything wrong happening in space, so they took the batteries out. Do not insert batteries in this, but when you got this,
Yep.
He had batteries in it. Right, Buzz?
So, have you ever thought about joining the Space Ranger Corps?
Yeah, I have, but I'm too old.
You might say we'll be friends to infinity and beyond.
All right. So when we got him at any more on the you got any more on the foot?
Yeah, you got the wanting to show him up in the
Yep.
commander's seat up there,
Right.
being the big shot, having a good time up there. And yes, you've got some other
Well,
pictures.
when Jennifer and I got him, and we had a ferry flight back to KSC,
Yeah.
so we took advantage of taking some photos, and this was Buzz out in front of the mate before we took off, or maybe at one of the stops along the way. But there's Jennifer and I with Buzz in one of the engines, and here's another one.
He's one of the engines of the Marine.
Buzz kicking the tires.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
my favorite
He's
one.
checking out the tires. So,
Yeah.
and of course, these are ones that we couldn't publish until Disney had cleared it. There he is up in the cockpit, playing around with the instruments. So.
Neat.
And here he is standing in the payload bay of the the back of the 747, which there's nothing there.
The green screen there's
Yeah.
giving us fits, but
But,
that's cool.
And then one of our stops was in Texas, obviously, and he's in front of one of the sheriff's vehicles.
Oh,
But,
wow.
But we finally landed here, and then Disney took him at KSC, and that was I think they shot that out in Edwards at the landing. But after he was landed he ends up as the Grand Marshal of the parade at Disney World. So
Yeah, look at him there. They had him on a little remote control car. I saw a picture of Fink at this thing.
and this is to infinity and beyond. Yeah,
There you
me,
go.
Me and Buzz together. So
That's right there. That's awesome there, Dean. Let's look at the let me put that. Yeah, we've got a couple of those other pictures there.
Yeah.
There he is at the. What do you think, Buzz?
Evil Emperor Zurg is out there somewhere. This galaxy needs my protection. My sensors indicate Zurg is in the area. Take cover.
Well, we will take cover because of the lightning
This is
going
an
on here.
intergalactic emergency.
All right.
all right.
Well, there he is landed on there. Tommy Usiak, we're having fun today. Glad you're watching. Gary Gerald's watching. Space Monkey. Doug Forrest, Tom Celentano, Carlton Bailey, Bill Whiting's watching. All faithful watchers of Stay Curious. We've got the pictures that blown up here a little bit to show you a little bit better there. Those are some cool pictures taken out there of the guy. And then, of course, he was ferried back by the Air Force One, right?
Yeah, we used Air Force One for this mission, and
Photoshop, all right. Air Force One never ferried the Space Shuttle, but that's a good one, Dean.
all right.
They even got Repo Man on it there. And there you are, Infinity and Beyond there with Buzz there. Interesting, you never know what you're going to wake up doing, I guess.
No.
But here is the Pixar creator of the animation there.
And the locker that he was stored in there. So.
Yep, and the locker that he was stored in there. And in fact, this is the recreation at the Smithsonian that they have of there. And here's Buzz in the parade. You can see they had him on a remote control car. I mean, it was just him. They didn't put a big version of it. It was the actual one that went to space there. Robert Law's enjoying this up in Dundee, Scotland. And we've got Susan's watching.
Oh,
Thank
well,
you.
all right. Well,
Your wife's watching there. Good to see you, Susan. Dave Staggy's enjoying this up in Michigan. We've got, what other picture I have here to show off while we're saying hi to everybody? Bennett Scarborough, Hazel Banks, Connie McDaniels, Hazel's her nickname, and Neil 1030 is staying curious with us today, Dean.
Right.
How does this rank up there at the things you've done for NASA throughout your career?
Well, it was fun. I mean, and we tried to make the job fun. We had to. We were deployed so much on some of these, because when you had 8 launches a year and you had to man these sites, they all run into each other, because to prepare for one of these sites, you had to have the names overseas 30 days ahead of launch. Mm-hmm. So it took a lot of work to get your team together, and we're talking about the 3 TAL sites and other sites then that we'd send somebody to the 3 TAL sites. Somebody had to go to White Sands in case we landed there, Edwards, and then up until 1995, we sent someone to either Guam or Hawaii as a landing site. So those were fun. I went to Guam twice and Hawaii twice, so they were good missions.
Get you a good barf bag there for your collection?
Well, it added to the collection.
Well, that's why Marty's raring to go here as one of the Space Launch System managers, the shuttle engines. It's a beautiful, clear, no cloud in the sky here, and they're wondering, why aren't we flying today? Because it's raining in Banjul or Morocco.
Right. I think there were 3 missions through the history of the shuttle program that we had that scrubbed with perfect weather here, and none of the 3 TAL sites had weather to land. So
that doesn't seem too bad odds, actually.
I was at Zaragoza one time, and that was the prime landing site, and I forget who the Talcom one, but he was out there flying around looking at it, and he says, well, there's a hole here, and I think by the time we launch, it's going to be over the field. And they launched on his, and they were perfect. It was a perfect call. Perfect weather when they would have had to land there. So the Talcoms were invaluable in making some of those calls to get us to be able to launch at some of these sites.
Well, the Transoceanic Aboard sites and Buzz Lightyear today on Stay Curious. Thank you, Dean Schaaf, for entertaining us. There's the guy at the parade at Disney. Disney was just over the moon with this, though. They got a lot of publicity out of it.
They did.
So think of how many of these little guys they sold, giving it there. So, Buzz, thank you, buddy, for appearing today.
Be careful. You don't want to be in the way when my laser goes off.
Well, we're going to get out of the room there. All right.
You, my friend, are one of my favorite life forms.
Well, thank you. That's a good way to... Cool. That's a good way to end it with Dean, because he's one of my favorite Earthlings here. Dean, thank you for sharing with us today a little bit about your experiences with NASA there. Thank you all for enjoying this and us having a little bit of fun. Marty, flawless program again today. Thank you, sir. And tomorrow we're going to have Mikey with us, Mikey Haddad of the Payloads. Mikey wrote a book on payloads, and we're going to talk about the repeat mission of STS, I think 8491. There's a life science mission. I got those numbers mixed up, 83, 94 maybe. We're going to talk about that with Mikey Haddad tomorrow, so you're not going to want to miss Payloads with him. Thank you, Marty, for a great job. Thank you, the American Space Museum, for all the support our staff does here, led by Karan Conklin, our executive director. And until tomorrow, I'm going to say that I'm Mark Marquette, and we can't wait to see you to bridge the space between us. Right, Buzz?
Right.
Let's take us out of here.
This place looks familiar. Have I been here before?
Yes, you have.
My ship has crash landed here by mistake. Who's in charge here?